President of America now.
And now, the Commander-in-Chief is back. Freedom Friday with Carl Gallups, the Oval Office of Gulf Coast Talk Radio.
Yes, we are back, and welcome back to the show. Hey, listen, my next guest is Mike Shoesmith, and Mike has been with this show almost since its inception many, many years ago, but he is also the executive editor of PNN News and Ministry Network, and that network has been around since 2008. So as we're doing this show, that's been 9 years. He's also an author. He's also a syndicated blogger. He is a licensed private investigator, and he is, as I said, the co-host of this show with me and Brenda Big B, and our Canadian correspondent. Coming up at the top of the second hour, we'll have our Israeli correspondent right out of Tel Aviv, Zev Parat. So he'll be up at the top of the second hour. But right now, Mike Shoesmith is in the house. Mike, it's good to have you with us.
Well, I am here. Sorry I missed last Friday's show because sadly my mother-in-law passed away.
Yeah, I know she did, and you were involved in that. My father-in-law passed away, and I preached his funeral. So all of that happened at basically the same time when your family and my family. So we've been really immersed in family ministry, which sometimes can be. It's very sweet, but it can also be some of the toughest too, especially as all the in-laws and outlaws gather, huh?
Well, absolutely. And as far as mother-in-laws go, there's a lot of jokes out there about mother-in-laws. My mother-in-law was one of the good ones.
Yeah.
She was an amazing woman, and I loved her dearly. She sort of stepped in as a mother figure in my life many years ago, and she will be greatly missed. But I was involved in every aspect of the funeral. In fact, I was there. I went to the funeral home to pick up her ashes because she was cremated. Now, feel free to have a different opinion on this, Carl. I personally have no problem with cremation for a believer because if we think about how many believers were burned alive in the first century, right? What about them? How many believers were eaten by lions?
Yeah.
How many believers have died at sea and been eaten by fish? I mean, this whole cremation thing, to me, it seems like we shouldn't have a problem with believers being cremated, in my opinion. Especially when you consider the difference in price. Now, I was involved in the financial dynamics of all of this, and the difference in price between a burial and a cremation, and her cremated remains were buried anyway because it was a plot that she purchased 20 years ago.
Right.
The difference in price was $10,000.
Yeah, it's astronomical. Yeah.
Who's got $10,000 to throw around, right?
Right.
I mean, my mother-in-law was not a rich person, and neither am I, or neither is my family or extended family. So, I mean, $10,000 is the difference in price here. Anyway, I have a greater point here to make, and that while I was picking up the ashes, I had a very interesting conversation with the funeral director about the cremation process, And I was asking him some questions about how does all this work, and all this and that and this. Well, that it's all very computerized now, right? So they bring the deceased to the incinerator, and they punch in a bunch of numbers into the computer. They punch in the person's weight. And a whole bunch of their height, a whole bunch of different parameters, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think fat index is one of them, BMI, body mass index, all of this stuff, right? And one of them is the person's gender, male or female.
Mm-hmm.
I said, wait a minute, hold the phone here. Back this truck up a little bit for me. You mean to tell me that computer needs to know whether it was a man or a woman, a male or a female, in order to properly do its role? He said, because a man's skin is 30% thicker than a woman's skin, right? So this all matters.
Well, now there's some jokes that could go there, but we're not going to make any jokes about thick skin and everything. So anyway, but go ahead. But you mean literally, a man's skin is literally thicker than a woman's skin. So go ahead.
So scientifically, I mean, this is all the computer cares about is the science, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is the actual facts. They don't care about how you feel about the facts. They just want the facts, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, there's the computer. There's no safe space in the computer.
That's right.
If you're concerned about this stuff, the computer doesn't care that you're concerned about this.
Doesn't matter if you're a snowflake or whatever. The computer just doesn't care.
Right. It doesn't care. So just the facts, ma'am. Only the facts, right? Joe Friday, remember him?
Right.
Anyway, so I said, wait a minute, just back this up a little bit. You mean to tell me that if Bruce Jenner was to die in a tragic accident in my hometown, and he would have to, for whatever reason, be cremated in this room here, you would have to put in the computer that it is a male and not a female. He said, as far as this, now this is what this funeral director said to me. He said, as far as this computer is concerned, you can count the number of genders on 2 fingers. Male and female. And if a man decides at whatever point in his life that he wants to be considered a female, that all ends at the entrance to this incinerator room. That all ends.
Yeah. So this is just a homophobic, politically incorrect computer, right? I mean, surely. So in other words, there is a difference between male and female. You and I have talked about this over and over. There's a genetic difference. There is a bone structure difference. And now you're telling me that even in cremation, the whole cremation process recognizes that there is a complete difference between the male and the female species regarding biological factors that make a difference in the act of creation. Cremation. Is that what you're telling us?
There's as far as that whole process is concerned, you are cremated in the gender you were born with. As far as that computer is concerned, and because of the difference in thickness of skin, the difference in bone density, all of this is taken in. All of these parameters are entered into this computer so that. I don't want to get too detailed here. Maybe some people are going through this in their lives right now.
Thank you.
But all of this is taken into consideration. But at the end of the day, you are cremated with the gender you are born with because it's all determined by chromosomes. None of this can be changed at any point in your life.
So, in other words, you're saying that science, hard, just the facts, bam, science says the exact opposite of what our Supreme Court says, what our government says, what our politically correct institutions say, what our snowflakes say, what the left says. Real hard science says. So billions of cells in your body scream that you're either male or female. In 99% of the cases. I know there's some genetic defects, and they're called defects, and we know that. But in 99% of the cases, 99.5% of the cases, billions of cells in your body scream either male or female. Your bones, remember that? We did a whole show about the bone structure, Mike.
Right.
It was the what was it? It was the National Museum for Natural History or something like that, and National Geographic and all these science magazines ran this big story about digging up bones that are thousands of years old, and they can tell immediately if it's a male or female by the bone structure.
By the bone structure. You strip away all of the outer stuff that's attached to the bones.
Yeah.
And what we see is so essentially what they were saying is if they dig up Bruce Jenner in 1,000 years, they're going to say this was a dude.
Right, exactly. And it doesn't matter if you put lipstick and grow your hair out and wear a dress and have surgery and have enhancements. None of that matters because you are either male or female. And like the guy said at the funeral home, that's the cremation expert, our computer in doing this recognizes 2 genders, male or female. That's it.
Right, and this is the second cremation that I've been involved with in my family. My sister-in-law died 10 years ago of cancer, and she opted for cremation. Now, she opted for cremation. We don't obviously make these. Whatever their last wishes are, that's what we do, right? And so my sister-in-law died 10 years ago, and it was the same scenario. I was involved in all that. And I went to the funeral home, and they said, okay, we're going to cremate your sister-in-law. What do you want to happen with the remains? And I said, well, what are my options? And they said they ran down, well, we could bury them in the plot in the ground, or we could put them in a mausoleum, which is quite common, or we could take the ashes and turn the ashes into a diamond. And I said, wait a minute. You got to be kidding me. You could take her ashes and turn them into a diamond? Doesn't that take millions and millions of years of intense pressure between the rock layers of the earth? He said, no, we just take her remains, which is essentially carbon, which we burned up, and we put that in a hydraulic press. It takes about 2 weeks. I said, wait a minute, it takes 2 weeks to make a diamond? He said, yes, it takes 2 weeks to make a diamond. He couldn't understand why I was so shocked by this, but the reason I'm so shocked by this is because the old earthers have been saying for centuries now that the reason diamonds are so valuable is because it takes millions and millions of years of extreme pressure, Carl,
right,
hundreds and thousands of feet beneath the Earth's surface, and then eventually works its way up to the surface or in diamond mines or whatever, and we find it, and we're so giddy that we found a diamond is so rare and precious because of what it takes to make a diamond.
Right, but now we find out your funeral director can make one for you.
Here this guy's telling me that he can whip up a diamond out of my sister-in-law in 2 weeks.
So, Michael, let me just ask you. Listen, you're a licensed private investigator. Let me put a case before you.
All right.
So, if your genetic makeup says either male or female, if your genome, which is your genetic makeup, the DNA picture of who you are, if it says male or female, if all of the billions of cells in your body say male or female, if your bone structure says male or female, if you can't even be cremated without the funeral director saying, no, that's a dude, no, that's a gal. So if it's not a physical thing, if it's not a genetic thing, then what's left? What is it? I mean, it's mental or spiritual or spiritual, right? I mean, I'm not trying to be mean. I'm not trying to be disparaging. It's just these people that run around and say, oh, no, it's genetic. I was born this way. What do you mean? Your bones are not any different. Your genomes are not any different. If you're cremated when you die, you're going to be whatever that birth certificate says because that's
right.
what you are. I mean, so what is it? If it's not physical, what are we left with, Mike?
Well, as a I am licensed by the Canadian government as a private investigator. As a licensed private investigator, we're taught to do certain things, right? One of those things is to go to the experts for information, right? And all we have to do is go to the people over at Johns Hopkins University and say, what do you guys think of this? And they have been very outspoken, but they have recommended we have got to stop doing this.
Yes,
people.
We've got to stop.
This is body dysmorphia,
child abuse,
mental disorder, child abuse, and we have just got to put a stop to this right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and again, we've got to take a break, Mike, and you and I know your heart because we talk about this off the air a lot. Neither one of us are truly, we're not disparaging anyone. We both of us have had family members or have family members or dear people that we love who are homosexual or transgendered and all of these things. We are not a hater of people, but we are a lover of truth. Right, Mike?
Absolutely. We love people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because Jesus loves people, except though I'm his favorite, though, right?
I say you are. Hey, folks.